This video you're about to watch is part of our Adeptus Custodes How to Play course. This is one video from our Playing Custodes module, which is the SWOT analysis, our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats for the Adeptus Custodes as a faction. This module also includes the army rule. We have unit spotlights, we have deployments, how to play against, everything you need to know playing the Custodes or against it, we have you covered on this module. We also have detachment modules for every single detachment you could play as an Adeptus Custodes player. And in each module, we cover an overview of the detachment, including SWOT analysis and top unit combos. Then we move on to an example competitive list. And finally, rounding off with some advanced tactics and strategies to help you improve your play on the tabletop with top-down examples as well. So there's so much to look forward to on this course. Now, if you're interested, the link is in the description below. So check it out and join us on the Discord server as well with that amazing community of Custodes players over there. And we hope you enjoy this video and you get tons of value out of it. And we'll see you in the next video. It's time now to take a look at the SWOT analysis for the Adeptus Custodes. So first of all, we're going to take a look at the strengths of the army. Stephen, what are some of the strengths of the Custodes?
Okay, strengths, really simple. This army is super elite infantry for the most part. Now, if we take a look at the play style of that, then obviously we've got this incredible army rule, sustained or lethal, that works in the combat phase, and we can select that, as I mentioned before, each time you fight. So you can have some units doing sustained, some units doing lethal. So it just allows the units that you need to do exactly what you need them to do at what scenario and situation. So one of the other biggest strengths for me of this army is they're super elite, but also they're incredibly durable as well. So most of the army, if we take a look at the infantry and also the bikes, you're looking between 3 to 5 wounds for those units, and the toughness is 6 up to 7. So they're quite tough little units. Everybody has a 2+ save. Everybody's got a 4+ invulnerable save. All the Custode Guard hit on 2s, whether it's the shooting phase or the combat phase. So these guys are accurate, they've got great saving throws, and they've got high wounds, high toughness. So they really can, in most situations, do what they need to do, whether it's that lethal or sustained. So there's often the opportunity there to really kind of go into most targets you need to.
Yeah, no, definitely, dude. Well, let's take a look at the weaknesses. What's the main weakness of the army?
Okay, so for me, the main weakness is their points. They're very expensive per model, okay? You're looking at potentially like 55 up to like 80 points per model, okay? And every time you lose a model, it's going to really hurt. You know, some of my models cost twice as much as other, you know, like units in the game. And that gives you a really interesting dynamic because this army cannot trade. It's not a trading army. There's not really many units in the game that I can go into and expect to get a good trade. And that a trade basically means when I'm killing a unit that's worth more than the points of my unit. So what I need to ensure that happens is I kill a unit, I'm able to survive the next turn, I'm able to kill another unit, I'm able to maybe even survive that turn, and then go and kill another unit. And that's really what needs to happen. And that can be very, very hard to get your models in the right place. The other thing that the army absolutely hates is anything that can either get around the 2+ armor save. So if you've got like ignores cover AP2, that's super annoying for me because I'm not going to get to use my really good armor save. This goes straight onto my invulnerable save. And then it becomes a 50-50 chance of whether my guys survive or not. And I don't really like that. It's not a great way to play the game, is to put it just on a 4+ save. It's not going to be something that is repeatable and consistent. And when you're going to a tournament or you're wanting to play well, you can't just expect to roll 4s. No. Now, the thing is, sometimes you will have those games where you roll really, really well and you roll 4s. And maybe that is the potential, like, determining factor and maybe pushes, you know, the result of the game slightly more in your favour. But equally, I've had those games where you roll under average, and all of a sudden you can start to lose your model so fast the game escalates extremely quickly or de-escalates extremely quickly from your perspective. Now, one of the other weaknesses there is obviously anything that has devastating wounds or mortal wounds, because that goes straight through my armour, straight through my invulnerable save, and now I'm just losing models essentially for free, okay? So that is a big, big issue. Another big weakness of the army is multiple damage attacks. You know, for every failed save, I'll lose a model. So if you're making me take 5 or 6 saves and you've got either damage 3, damage 4, or d6 plus 2, or just, flat 6 damage, every single failed save is a loss of maybe 50 up to 80 points a model. And that is a huge, huge blow basically to a Custodes player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, how do you fill that in then with the opportunities in the list? Are there units you can take that can maybe help you trade a bit better? Or even have you got stratagems that can help you reduce damage potentially?
So I think for me, the biggest opportunities in the book are the once per game abilities. And Custodes are really unique in this aspect that each of the custodian units have a one-time ability. Okay? These one-time abilities are unique to every single unit, and these really allow you to get a little bit more out of your units. So for example, the Terminators, once per game, can leave the table and come back on.
Right.
One of the biggest weaknesses that we didn't get to is actually their mission playability. I cannot afford to have a 250-point unit doing an action for a turn.
No.
They need to be in the fight, and they need to constantly be in the fight. I need to be shooting these models, I need to be fighting with these models. If I'm not getting my turns out of my units, I'm not going to achieve their points back at any stage. So I can't afford to do actions with them, and that's a massive, massive weakness. So having these little opportunities, like using these once per game abilities, can either help me reposition, get back into the fight quickly, or maybe kill a unit and get out of the way so I can be a little bit more protected. And I think really the opportunities are here. So for example, the Wardens, they've got a once per game 4+ feel no pain. This can keep this unit extremely, or make it extremely durable against single phase armies. And what I mean by a single phase army is like your World Eaters, your Tau, that only really do one thing in one phase. You've got your Bike Captain. Once per game, after it's fought, it can make a normal move. So it means you can go into combat, kill a unit, move and hide. So therefore you can get another chance of moving out, shooting a unit, charging a unit, killing it. And that just means you're going to be able to effectively trade with these units a little bit more often because of these once per game abilities.
Yeah, definitely. So you're using them to kind of enhance the unit and get the most out of them, because like you said, they're so expensive,
Yes.
You can't afford to waste them, can you?
You can't. If you misplay any of those abilities, then you are not going to get the maximum from your army, and you're going to lose games very, very quickly.
Do we have any ways in the army to maybe minus damage, potentially to help us keep our models alive, or any other ways of getting feel no pain outside of the once per game abilities?
Not really. There's a couple of stratagems mixed in the detachments that either give you a 4+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, and you can, let's say you throw a grenade at me, I can see what damage you do, and then I can decide to use my stratagem or not. There's a couple of little ways, but not many. There's not much damage reduction. There is no real fights first on the custodian units. I haven't really touched much on the Sisters of Silence. We will talk about those as well a little bit, but I'm just talking about sheerly the custodian units at the moment. There's minimal elements of fight and death, and the only real defensive abilities that we have are -1 to hit on infantry units when they are on a objective, and that's in one particular detachment. So there's not a huge amount. They are sprinkled throughout the book, but there's not one detachment that gets them all.
Right.
I think one of the biggest issues as well with the army is, it's kind of sort of going on to some of the threats out there, right? Is getting pinned down, locked in combat, because there are a couple of instances of fallback shoot and charge, but you cannot be stuck in combat. You need to be constantly shooting and fighting. Getting stuck in combat is not great. Because of also the way that the turn sequence works, and who gets to pick the first unit, you need to make sure these units are always going into their preferred charging unit, and that's really key as well. You need to be able to select your targets.
Do we have access to advance and charge? Then is that something that we could do? Because obviously we need to get into combat. That's where we do really well. Our army rule even makes us do stuff in combat better.
Yeah.
So do we have access to this?
One instance, and that is on the Blade Champion, and that is once per game.
Right. Okay.
Well, many other codexes have a stratagem. They have lots of this different access. Custodes don't. Their stratagems typically are probably one of the weakest elements of actually the codexes. when you know look sort of cross selection of them all, they're probably the weaker stratagems that there are. There are some fantastic ones in there, but they typically find themselves in different detachments. There's not like one real standout. There's an argument to take any of them actually.
Okay. Well, actually, you mentioned it earlier with the Sisters of Silence. Do they come in as an opportunity to the Codex rather than actually analysing them as part of the SWOT analysis?
I think what I do with the Sisters of Silence units is I look at them as a way to fill points out.
Right.
It does depend on the detachment that you play. There's one detachment specifically that really gets the most out of the Sisters of Silence. Okay, so if you were taking that detachment, of course you're going to want to take as many as you possibly can, and then fill the like weak areas with Custodes. Okay, that is arguably one of the weakest detachments.
Right.
Okay, now there's another one called Talons of the Emperor. This is where you're meant to combine both Sisters and Custodes together, and they actually cross over and benefit each other with a slight detachment rule. Okay, so they'll help each other out. The Custodes, for example, get a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds, for example, and the Sisters of Silence get +1 to hit.
Right.
Okay, but they have to be nice and close, and therefore means you need to have enough of these units to really maximise your detachment rule. The one that I play the most, which is Shield Host, they don't get any benefits whatsoever. So I'm simply taking some units to essentially either hold my backfield, screen out parts of the the battlefield, and that is a huge weakness as well of Custodes. They cannot screen. If you want to charge me, you are charging my vulnerable units. If you are wanting to deep strike in, I can't stop you. I do not have the footprint to have units just in no man's land screening out. I can't do it. And if you put too many assets doing that, that's even less damage output that you're able to put across to your enemy. So I normally take maybe 1, perhaps 2 units to play the mission and do some of those actions for me so I don't have to commit a 250-point unit to do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're using them basically as an opportunity to fill in for the things that the Custodians don't want to be doing.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, interesting. Threats. What threats are there to the Custodes?
As we mentioned, units that can deep strike down, they can kind of get around the army very, very quickly. They can make me have to turn around, go back into different areas of the table that I might not want to. One of the other things as well that can really sort of threaten me is those armies that are like a particular type of stat checker that I might get bogged down into. Okay, so for example, if I charge in with like elite unit and I charge into, let's say, a Keeper of Secrets, I'm going to really struggle. I don't have the weight of attacks to kill it in one go, and then it's going to get to fight back another unit. Okay, and then if it, using 2 CPs, it interrupts, I might lose the other unit before it gets to attack. So therefore, do I just go in with 1 unit and do some damage and then expect to die in the same turn? I can't keep, that's a game I'm going to lose very quickly.
You're not trading, are you? And I mean, not you're going to trade into a Keeper of Secrets, but it's still like that sort of profile. You're just losing units to try and get some damage off onto a model.
And that's exactly it. If you start to as well take a bit of a mix list where you're taking some guns, some tanks, a bit of everything, you might find yourself not really achieving anything onto the tabletop. So in the lists that I've done and been successful with, I've got certain units to do certain things for me, but it generally has a very synergistic play style where I'm looking to get as many units in combat as I possibly can to maximise the army and the detachment rule. Okay, and I think we always say this, especially when you're on the academy, when we're looking at actually how to write lists, you want to lean into that army rule. So for me, there are a lot of threats coming in the multiple damage. Anything with like +1 to wound is horrible against me because all of a sudden, even it starts to break the thematic aspect of I've got these really elite custodian bikes, for example, and maybe scions that drop in with a plasma gun.
Yeah.
With +1 to wound is now wounding me on 2s. A guardsman with a plasma gun is wounding my bike on a 2. It's like, and then I fail a save. All of a sudden, I lose a big chunk of my wounds that I have in that unit. And if I've got a unit of 2 bikes, that's 10 wounds. That's, I don't need to fail many saves. All of a sudden, I've lost my entire unit. So they can be very difficult. Like we said, so those sort of stat check units, like units that have got good and vulnerable, good feel no pains, or any damage, -1 damage. half damage. I can't deal with those at all.
Yeah.
I don't even have the volume of attacks to get through in some of my units. And as a Custodes player, you really need to think about, the size of the units. You need them small enough so that you can do actions with them if you needed to, but also big enough to deal the damage where you have to. So yeah, against a stat check army, it can be very difficult.
Would you say invulnerable saves are maybe a threat in the fact that you don't have much access to devastating wounds yourself, do you?
No. No, I really don't. So, again, having a 4-up invulnerable save can be a bit of a slog to get through. So in the mirror match can be quite a tricky one. Or against something like demons can be really difficult as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, Steve, thanks for going through that SWOT analysis with me. And hopefully this has given you some insight into a SWOT analysis of a Custodes list. So when you go through the detachment modules, make sure you apply your own knowledge to and make a SWOT analysis for those detachments yourselves, using this as a guide moving forward. But the next video, we're going to take a look at the deployment of a Custodes army. So we'll see you there.